Hello, everyone. This is Bob Samuels from Tech Connector, and I'm also the host of the ABM Leaders Group. And I have a great group of ABM leaders here with me today as we talk about actionable intelligence and insights. And I think everybody will enjoy it. I'd like to encourage the webinar audience to go ahead and ask questions, and we'll be entertaining them as we go. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guests. So Bill Doyle from SAP, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Bob. Thanks for inviting me today. I really look forward to the conversation today.
So tell me about your interactions with ABM and Cristobal and such.
Yeah, great question. So team, nice to meet everyone on the call today. I'm with SAP and I'm our Digital Account Insights program lead. What does that really mean? It means a lot of things, but essentially, you know, our team called our Cristobal team in SAP is really focused on getting an account view with a lot of specificity and details around how do we do account-based marketing? What insights do we use for ABM, and how do we then render them both to our sales and to all our other teams, whether it's marketing, so that we create the best possible customer experience that we can do, as well as just equip our teams so that they're knowledgeable about accounts too. So so I have a marketing background. I'm in what's called our competitive customer and market insights group now. So think of us as a service to the whole company, from the board level down to the individual marketer or seller, around providing insights on accounts to teams.
Okay. And your insights are both first party and third party information?
Yes, correct. And a whole, kind of the whole gamut. So, which I can get into a little bit later.
Yeah, thank you. And Leslie, how are you today?
I'm great, Bob. How are you doing?
Very good. So I know you deal with a lot of first party and third party data as well.
Yeah, we do. So I lead the global growth marketing organization at Avanti, and what that means is that I lead the team of people who are responsible for developing our marketing strategy that we bring into market from a campaigns perspective. I have the people who have kind of the tactical and channel expertise in our demand center of excellence group, which are the people who understand deeply how to leverage our different technologies and the channels we deploy through, like digital marketing, marketing automation, et cetera, and the marketing operations organization. So collectively, the group of people who need to, build and curate our data, serve it up through the appropriate systems, and then, develop the strategy for how it's done in the best way possible.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for joining us. Angel, how are you today?
Doing great. Happy Thursday, everyone, and good morning. And well, do you want me to talk about myself?
And ABM and what kind of approaches you're taking, or what's kind of overview?
Absolutely. We can go deeper as we get along, but I am at Gigamon and I head our global ABM program. And so what that essentially means, we set up globally, we have a set of target accounts that have been identified, and we run a lot of campaigns to those accounts to build engagement and drive velocity into the business with those accounts.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining. And Rohan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Bob, and thanks for this opportunity.
So how do you get involved with ABM and intelligence and insights?
So we come from the other side of the table, where we are the ones who consolidate this entire intelligence from different sources. We are right there at the ground level, looking at different campaigns being built around different customers, different markets, and we are sourcing this information. We are collecting this, consolidating this, validating it with a lot of key opinion leaders, building mechanism to make this data intelligent, relevant, and accessible to everyone. So Avira uses its data partners. It builds technologies to make the data smarter and relevant to its customers. So that's how we have been involved, helping companies get an access to the right level of intelligence, as well as we are now in the learning phase of understanding what exactly other points that Avira needs to focus in the near future as well as in maybe, let's say, a couple of years down the line.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Erica, how are you today?
Yes, I'm good, Bob. Thanks for having me. So I'm over at Cisco. I lead the Americas field marketing team, demand gen team. And so for ABM, we're all focused on it. We're all in, and data intelligence is a huge piece for us. And right now we're in the phases of kind of working with the bills of the world there's tons of data, and how do we make that actionable based on the objectives that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Data, I mean, to me, data can be pretty evil because it's not, I mean, if it's not intelligent, if it's not something you can make sense out of it, it can be pretty overwhelming and you can get lost in it pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Bill, you're shaking your head on that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, in terms of data, and so Eric, I mean, we work very closely with our marketing teams and sales teams, and you deal with it every day as well. And there's just loads of first-party data, whether it's coming from your website or what type of firmographic data you may have, and then combining it with third-party data, whether it's intent data or other sources, financial data, and really bringing it back in so that it makes sense to a seller who has 10 seconds to try to digest something, make a conclusion, and then draw an action against it. But then also our marketers who can maybe have more time to put together the right data points to enact in a particular campaign. So
Can I ask a question about that?
yeah.
You said something that kind of perked my ears, which is, we want to serve insights up to a seller that only has 10 seconds to draw a conclusion. If the sales teams if we're doing account-based marketing or as a company, we've committed ourselves to account-based engagement, and our sales organization has theoretically been set down on a path of the accounts that are going to yield the most impact. Why do they only have 10 seconds?
Yeah, it's a good point. So maybe I'll put a bit finer point on that a little bit, right? And it's getting back to how do you maybe define account-based marketing, and then how do you define account-based engagement? So I kind of take the prism of so we've developed a crystal ball solution where we essentially push out a lot of insights to our sales teams in terms of third-party intent data and predictive analytics that we put over top of that. So take like a General Electric or something, we're telling them what General Electric is kind of interested in, what they're researching, that kind of stuff. We're also pulling in first-party data on that as well. And we put it into a nice UI so that a seller can very quickly understand what is the priorities at General Electric. So that 10 seconds, I mean, we have a pretty complex portfolio at SAP. So we're able to kind of ferret out for them, out of whether it's, a procurement solution or other cloud-based solutions or HR, which one is most prominent. So it's that balance, right? You bring up a great question. 10 seconds, I was maybe being a little bit melodramatic, but it is it's finding that balance between simplicity and too much data. But getting back to the account-based marketing discussion, you also bring up a very good point, because we typically look at it, and a lot of you are probably familiar with the ITSMA models, one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many. And this is me personally speaking. I get the most jazzed out of actually one-to-few and one-to-many account-based marketing, because I feel like there's more data that you put together to kind of solve for who you're targeting. Whereas in one-to-one, it can be very custom. It can be very, and it's all, there's no right or wrong solution, but one-to-one tends to be very focused, very tight collaboration with sales on a very set number of accounts, which is awesome. I just also like the scaled customization is what I think about it, account-based marketing too. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I tried to.
So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that synthesizing information down to give to sales so that they can take it to understand and draw some conclusions quite quickly is absolutely really important. I actually had a interesting dialogue with my leadership team this week. We were doing our planning sessions, and the very hot discussion was around if let's say that we had no ability to present that nice little package to the sellers, right? We can't synthesize it for whatever reason. We can't plug it into Salesforce yet because there's a backlog in IT, or even our sellers just won't look at it anyway. Is it still worth doing? Is it still worth doing account-based marketing? If we're saying, okay, well, we know that these are the accounts that the sellers are going after. They may be tackling it blind on their own because they're not choosing to or can't look at the insights that we synthesize, but marketing can still synthesize it and create great customer experiences that are very personalized but oriented towards the right accounts in the way that the sales team want to be speaking to them. Is it still worth doing? Curious if anybody has a thought on that.
Yeah, so great point, Leslie. So I've actually done both in my first early days of ABM. As we all know, we have to have sales at the table because they are part of it. And it was very hard to get them at the table and for them to understand. And so we said, let's go and run this and then show sales the outcome of it. Start with that baseline of here's how these accounts are currently engaging and here's how we're marketing to them. And it was eye-opening for all of us. We were sending them everything, no matter where they were, no matter what products they had in their portfolio from us. So once we proved out, hey, we've been running this and this is working, that is when the sales and marketing partnership really happened for me in my experience with sales at that time. That was a long time ago. I was learning at the same time, but then once we proved it out, that's when we were able to bring sales to the table to show them. I think now as I've moved along, we have sales at the table in the beginning because ABM has been around a lot longer now and they've had the experience. There is a ton of data to show them, and it's showing them how we put it in action based on the objective. So it's what are we trying to achieve? And Bill, to your point on the one to few, one to many, I couldn't agree more. We call it clustering based on the data. From the data, we're seeing this cluster of accounts. So let's talk their language based on these clusters.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I think, Leslie, you bring up a good point about, data. We give them a lot of data, but you can also on the back end prove that all the data we provide them, and if they actually use that, the velocity and the engagement and the pipeline build is much faster. And we actually ran a study last year. We have what we call an HPT model, which is high propensity targeting. And so we cluster or classify accounts based on A, B, C, Ds. And we saw that A and B accounts, which are part of our ABM list, closed 84% more or better than the ones that were in the Ds and Es, right? So that immediately informs us that using what we're doing in our ABM world and using that knowledge to take action really helps drive our sales. And that, I think, has been a key. Given that we've all been doing ABM a few years now, that has been a key metric that we are using as we build new ABM account lists going forward. And I'm curious to find out from the team, do you all refresh your account lists every year, or is there a frequency that you refresh it at, or do you keep it consistent? Because that's another area that we're still working our way through.
Refresh it, and I would say more than annually. Although Avanti acquires a company or two every quarter, and so we have to relook at those things. But yeah, I'd say reevaluate those account lists. And actually, you mentioned high propensity targeting, which is interesting. I hadn't heard HPT before, but I'm guessing that it's probably a more mature ICP methodology. How do you define high propensity? Is it based upon fixed attributes or dynamic attributes?
A mix. So we have over 400 different data signals that our marketing operation teams pulls together. So it's internal data based on ICP and external data based on intent signals that these accounts are putting forth. So for example, last year with COVID hit, we did a huge reevaluation of our list, and we pulled out industries that were no longer a good fit. So for example, airlines, right? Not a good fit in COVID time. So those cruise lines, all of those became part of our detractor industry. And then we had promoter verticals where we then started doubling down. So we use over 400 intent signals in that HPT modeling.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Rohan,
awesome.
yeah.
And maybe just one thing I'd add is around the, I couldn't agree with everyone more, around the account-based marketing and the sales alignment is, my own opinion, I think some of the best marketers are ones that take the license to go proactively to sales and say, here's the proposal I have for you. And here's what I think we can drive. And I've always been amazed, like sometimes marketers will assume, oh, we can't touch sales pipeline, or we just can't.
Oh, I
mess.
touched the heck out of it.
I got you, so there you go. So there you go. You're all over it. But I mean, other people, like, you know what, sales kind of gets, maybe sometimes gets territorial once it gets to a certain stage in the pipeline. But you come up with proposals, and like we have a big, massive pipeline progression initiative through the end of the year now that I happen to think is more account-based marketing, because we've taken a bunch of first-party signals, third-party signals, financial information, kind of like what you were talking about, Angel, and mapping that against early stage pipelines. So stuff that's maybe not expected to close for a while out. The theory being, let's try to pull that pipeline in earlier or quicker. So we're kind of telling sales that, hey, like, you might not be in attention to this much, but there's a lot of indicators saying there's a lot more going on in that account. So why don't you go at least like follow up at a minimum?
Yeah, we
also have some targeted marketing around that too, like some of that, just in terms of surround and air cover around that too.
Yeah, exactly. We call that pipeline acceleration.
Yep.
And the way I position it is like, we're your wingman. Like once it gets into pipeline, our job is to be omnipresent because you can't be, right?
Yes, agree.
So.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing about the conversion or the metrics, again, the license, like if you can demonstrate better results, like we see with the accounts that we flag as the highest priority accounts, we typically see like 2 to 4x, improvement in conversion rates from pipeline like system wide. So that's a proof point, and that kind of helps buttress when you're saying to sales why you should help us focus. So not you need to, but let's work together to see if we can't help you sell more software at the end of the day.
So I'm sorry, I feel like oh, go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Leslie. I heard most of you talking about setting accounts, refreshing the accounts, trying to understand the target market. It's interesting for me to understand how intelligence is being used to decide whom to target and how to target. I have a question for all 4 of you to understand that most of the sales cycle in the companies that you are is pretty long, 6 to 12 months and 18 months in some cases. How much of this data intelligence is also carried along throughout the sales cycle? Because we get asked a lot about something called as win factors. So I really want to understand what is this data intelligence that also get carried along in winning those customers for you. It's fine that you have a target market which is decided, but is data intelligence also a part of the strategy further after identification of those accounts?
Yeah, so I would say one term that we pull away from is the sales cycle. We do ABM for the complete customer life cycle. So we're constantly looking at this data in all different ways based on the customer. And so that is why, like, to the point of, marketing touching opportunities, when marketing and sales have a partnership and we're doing account-based experience, if you will, for our organization is we set up programs for the customer life cycle. So we are in partnership throughout the entire journey, and that data is always on, if you will. We're constantly going there. I mean, there's shifts in the market that happen with our competitors where we have to quickly shift based on those things with our customers. And so we're constantly looking at that list and updating it throughout the entire fiscal year.
Thanks, Erica.
I would say that's the philosophy we're working toward. Avanti is a little bit less mature in our journey here. I've been with the company since November of last year, and we've been making progress towards a more of an account-based type philosophy with our sales organization, which has to lead what we do from a marketing perspective. And making this shift to thinking about sales cycles to customer life cycle is exactly the kind of what we're trying to get to. It's shockingly hard to get people to change their way of thinking in that way, but super necessary for businesses that have a robust portfolio of things that you can where you can continuously add value, right? Your sale is not a transaction and then you move on to the next person. And I mentioned we do a lot of acquisitions. Our business strategy is continue to acquire companies, which comes with customers and products that then we can add value to our existing customer base with. So it's like this never-ending thing. It's I'm finding it to be a harder shift for people conceptually to make than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I agree with you right there. It's a tough one to get everybody engaged, but it is definitely, with ABM becoming more and more prominent as a philosophy and approach, a lot of our organizations are definitely going towards continuing to work through the customer life cycle and engaging all the different stakeholders. So, we have what I call the concept of ABM boards. So I work with the sales teams, the operations teams, the customer success teams. So we're working and using data and intent signals through all of the different tools available to us across all those functions, right? And at the end of the day, the goal is to have an account view or a ABM view, if you will, of every account across the different functions that helps inform our next campaign or strategy, if you will. So absolutely critical. Data and actionable data is definitely critical.
One other thing. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just kind of curious on that. Sorry, I'm like, all this stuff is really fresh in my mind because I'm just getting off my leadership meeting this week, and we're talking about all the things that we want to accomplish. And what we've said we want to do is we want to establish a philosophy for each account that where we believe we should be going with that account and what they would be most likely, their highest propensity to buy, what they're most likely interested in. But then we want to, and we start our marketing and our engagement layers that way, and at a marketing and a sales perspective. So let's say we believe this cluster of accounts based upon these attributes are the next best thing for them to go down is this, let's say, product. And we have sales plays that our sales teams will run, and we'll approach that from a marketing perspective. But what we said is we want to constantly be listening as well and be looking for intent signals that tell us that we need to pivot. Tell us that something so we want enough data to make a really great hypothesis and try to get it right the first time. But if something is happening with that customer, we want to be able to pivot, and we need our marketing omni-channel experience to be able to pivot on a dime. But we also need sales to know that something that this has now pivoted, and these are the signals that told us so. And that seems tricky to do. I'm not worried about doing it from a marketing perspective. I'm worried about bringing sales along. Anybody do that?
Well, I can speak maybe unpack a couple things here. So, we've built several different ways that sales can consume our data and insights, whether it's in a portal. We also have a mobile app we've built. So like at their fingertips, to your point, Leslie, like they can understand what product areas and so forth are of greatest interest, you know? So they can do that self-service independently, because we wanted to federate this data and not simply like make it just a marketing led like ABM. So they have that ability to do that on their own today. Then when you get into ABM, you know, we were able to provide them through different tools and so forth that we have, like kind of those lifts and shifts in the business. So it's not just the portals, but we have like different sales management tools like outreach and those types of tools where, you know, they can also use our insights in terms of campaigns and so forth. So there's kind of like different layers that we use to enable sales and to keep it dynamic, if you will, and at their fingertips. So, and a fair amount of it is automated too.
I mean, in my work, it's a lot about the pods that I mentioned earlier, the ABM pods. So we have regular trainings and regular meetings. I mean, I find tools and giving it information to them and making it available is great. But at the end of the day, attention spans are so short and they have so much happening. The only way I can actually move the needle sometimes is having those one-on-one meetings. And whether it's 15 minutes, just 15 minutes, power packed with information. Here's what's going on with your account, giving them dashboards. We use demand-based Engagio as our platform for ABM. And I am working with them to build custom dashboards for each of our accounts that then we use as our discussion starter, if you will, when we meet. So it's a mix. It's always a mix.
Yeah. And just one thing to add to that, Angel, like our ABM teams, they do tend to kind of that ITSMA paradigm, of one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many. So some ABM marketers that are more focused on the one-to-one, I mean, they're working with sales also in the partnership. And I'll maybe getting back to what you were saying, Rohan, too, was like the sales cycle, but the customer life cycle, right? In our accounts that are identified as one-to-one, I mean, that's a year or multi-year engagement, throughout. These are massive accounts with, massive investment. And then, you just kind of figure out what your approaches are, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many, and how you kind of staff and resource against that.
Yeah, Leslie, I would say in my experience, it's a constant learning because all sales people work differently in trying to find how we can connect with them consistently to making sure that they're aware of any shifts and changes. A lot of automation, ABM tools that we utilize give them access. We set up standing calls. We use our collaboration tools to set up spaces and constantly provide updates, but there's always going to be, well, I didn't know, where do I find this information? At least for me, I mean, we've set up SharePoint sites. I feel like newsletters, I'll give them a call. I was like, do you want me to text you? It's a constant shifting enablement, I would say.
Couldn't agree more. And it is a bit of change management, but something, it's the lifts and shifts of the business. I mean, how much of your sales force might either change roles or, you'll have new people coming in. So it's a constant education process and continuous reinforcement. It never ends, even though, sometimes like, do I really have to do this enablement again or something? Yeah, you actually have to.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Good. So one question I have, and maybe it's related, is what types of data, actionable intelligence, if you will, from third-party solution providers do you value? What I always think that the most important is win factors and pain points. But what are you able to get those currently, or is that a challenge to get, or what else do you value?
I'll let someone want to start and I'll chime in later or whatever you guys like to do.
You can go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I think like data points in our CMI team, we look at kind of competitive insights is one big kind of pillar. if you will, and then you have market insights, which is another pillar. And then you have like customer insights as a kind of like, I think these are major pillars, right? And then, so, market, we look at things like addressable market, growth rates in different regions and countries. Competitive insights is like, what are your competitors doing? What are companies researching? A lot of that is, some of that is third-party data or third-party vendors that we work with to get some of that. Once you get into customer insights and like account-based insights, we tend to go more into, let's say, intent data as the kind of first layer. But then we put a lot of predictive analytics over top of intent data to kind of smooth out like typical surges or whatever, but also to kind of be more intelligent around what are the actual kind of in-market indicators for different companies. We also look at financial data, and this is, Angel, gets back to what you were saying. We have like financial scorecards and so forth around the health of companies, and that was really prompted, especially when COVID first hit. And now we're monitoring. And so from an industry standpoint and from scaled ABM, you can really think about like, what is your messaging? If you've got an industry like the cruise line that's still kind of distressed, it's coming out, right? It's coming out now, but your messaging and so forth might be more around operational excellence and those types of solutions that are going to help them get back on their feet. Whereas a company that's blinking green, high growth mode, you might be into a cloud transformation type of discussion, or something like that, where they're actually going to be, investing. So a lot of different things, both internally as well as third party, that we look at. And then in the intent kind of spectrum or insights from the market, in our crystal ball solution, we don't feel like there's one provider that has all the answers. So we kind of have a mix of different types of providers and intent, whether it's your peer providers, you pick the names, right? A G2 or something like that. There's other players, or whether it's Bidstream or Ad Network type of intent or data co-op. So we kind of take different sources in terms of our ultimate, solution that we do. So that's my 2 cents.
No, that's really actually covered a lot right there, Bill. It's great insights. I think another thing I found we've done is add on a layer of surveys to your survey data. We really go out into market ourselves through very targeted surveys into the different personas, because all of us, I'm assuming, are dealing with large organizations, different groups within those organizations, different personas that you're trying to connect with. And so each one of those personas may have different pain points and challenges, which drive their internal decision. So we use data from surveys that we're conducting into those personas, if you will, to also then inform our next steps.
So Angel, those personas are actually real people, right? So you're getting intelligence on people, the decision makers themselves, or the influencers and so forth. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So I saw a nice chat going on between Leslie and Mary Lee in our audience. And so talking about partnership with sales. So how is that? Is it usually having to pull them along, or do they appreciate the teamwork? And what other internal customers do you have? I think, Bill, you've talked about the board as being a key customer, maybe customer success, maybe the content team. Who are your internal customers, and what kind of challenges, or what do you find works best as far as making it a collaborative effort?
Well, I have a fairly strong view on this one, which is my only customer is our business's customer. And everybody else every other function within the business is a partner, and we work together to service our customer. And I think it's very dangerous, actually, for organizations to think of or allow ourselves to think about ourselves as a service to sales, because there's an inherent assumption of subservience, and when really there's unique incremental value that each function plays and a role that each function has to play. And that's actually why I like the terminology account-based engagement rather than account-based marketing, because account-based marketing, inherent in the term, leads one to believe that it is a marketing strategy, and it's not. It's a commercial strategy for how you run your business. And that can only be done in concert with marketing and sales, but also product management. There's a whole lot of, there's many layers within the organization that need to be bought in to this kind of methodology, and everybody needs to play their part. Hence I say partnership. So we can say, we put in all this work so that sales can act on it and sales can react to it and do all the things. And it's like, oh man, we got to work just as hard to bring sales along. While that is true, if we're actually thinking about this correctly, on the exact same side of the coin, the sellers who have the direct line of connection to the customers need to work just as hard on their side to help us understand. So that's kind of how I think of this.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that is, our strategy is the customer-centric approach, and that's the customer life cycle, anything that we do. And so to your point, Bob, of, who are the different teams that you need to partner with, it is way more than sales. It is marketing operations and sales operations. We actually need those two teams talking to each other a lot to understand what we need to deliver. And then it's also customers. It's basically like we put an image of a customer in the middle, and all the different touch points that customer has, everybody needs to be involved. And that's like, we create, in our collaboration spaces, those tiger teams, if you will, which it's a lot. And we have the different campaigns and keeping updated, but it is a partnership. And to your point of, is it difficult? It's not difficult because we're delivering it from a customer centric point of view, not this is what marketing wants to do, not this is what sales wants to do. This is what we need to do for the customer. And it was just always customer centric focused.
So I have a follow-up question to what Leslie made a point. We are talking about actionable intelligence over here. And when you are taking customer as the center point for the entire organization to focus upon, what kind of a difference do you see in the actionable intelligence that you and your team would consume versus what a sales would consume at this point of time, where we're talking more about engagement, personalization, talking about the customer lifecycle from a longer perspective? How do you see the difference between the same actionable intelligence as a topic that we're talking for you versus the sales team?
Well, I think that we need the same data attributes on both sides of the house, but how we consume them and act on them are going to be different, right? So, from a marketing perspective, we need to get to a level where we can react to information at scale, which means I like the word cluster that was used already, but so we can cluster pieces of information and then act upon it in groups, whereas a seller needs to be able to stitch together more wide-ranging or broad sets of information to craft a singular story on an account level and bring that through. But I think I struggle to think of a piece of data or an attribute of our customer that both sides of the house don't need to be able to use in different ways.
Okay.
Maybe to add one to that, maybe one way to think of it too is like the different, totally agree, like at the end of the day, it's all about the customer and customer first and having that orientation across the board. Internally, customers, when you're dealing with board level inquiries or requests, it tends to be more around larger scale kind of business questions, like what's the momentum of this competitor in EMEA North? Are they trending up? Are they trending down? What do we do about it? Now that's still valuable to sales within that region and but you tend to get more of these kind of big galactic questions, from the board. So you need to be prepared with your data to fact-based answer those questions. It can't be like, flying by the seat of your pants. You need to have data to justify what you're saying. But, then you kind of peel the onion back and you get down to COO level data. You get down into sales. You get down into marketing. You get down into customer success around retention and renewals. So a lot of different data points can serve a lot of different individuals in the organization, but it does get back to at what level do you provide it to them, and what type of questions, do they need to be more successful and to have and to create a great customer experience at the end of the day.
I would agree with that. And what you just said sparked a thought, Bill, which for me, it sounds like SAP is doing this really well, or at least you're pitching it as it is, in creating a centralized source of truth for this data that different users can go, utilize to glean what they need to glean for their own use case. I don't have, I would love that. I don't think I have that today, certainly. I think that I would suppose that if there was somebody who wanted to answer the question, how's this competitor doing in EMEA North? The approach that they would take would be to go run some sort of project or source that, find a means by which to source that information, rather than having a central source of truth through which to at least start. So that to me is probably a nirvana state for many of us.
It's kind of funny you say that, because that's actually our nirvana. That's our comment to our teams, is that, we aspire to and are the single source of truth for, these pillars that I talked about earlier around questions around competitive insights, market insights, customer insights. So you're going to get kind of one view of what our addressable market is, from our organization, and it's going to come from here. So you kind of know, what the sources are and where it's coming from. So it's funny you said that term, because that's actually a term we use.
And I think, Bill, you've mentioned that you're considered to be the voice of the customer when you're bringing the information.
Well, yeah, and we like that's a good point. I mean, it gets back to what everyone on the panel has said around, it sounds like table stakes being customer centric, but we don't want to presuppose, like in big organizations, like we know what our priorities are, and we're like, we know maybe what we need to sell, or like what our priorities are, but it sure also helps to get the voice of the customer and listen to, because what you may think sometimes aren't necessarily what is top of mind in EMEA South, or, so anecdotally, or even tribal knowledge from sales may say this, but then the data will tell us, the voice of the customer saying, they're actually researching this a lot, and it wasn't even on our radar. So it's taking the data, it's letting the insights also drive our decision making.
Yeah.
So what do you do if your sales anecdotes don't match what the data say?
Yeah, you know what? It gets back to what everyone said here. It's the conversations. It's the it's the conversations. It's the transparency with sales around that, and it's workable. And they have, like, a lot of times sales is on, but the times they aren't, we can say, hey, here's another opportunity for you that you might not be aware of, right? So it's truly that a teaming relationship there. Like, I've never seen friction when maybe our data is saying, oh, usually they're like, oh, this is great to know. Maybe we should do something. We will maintain this priority because it is, but let's maybe pivot. I think someone used the term pivot earlier, but pivot to this area too, that maybe we didn't initially see as an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot where the agile marketing comes in to play here. And that is one thing that, especially with everything we've been going through in the last year and a half on how we have all had to shift. And I'll actually say, in my experience, at least, I have noticed sales having the partnership more, wanting to look at the data, understanding the digital customer experience. How can we improve that, since we've all kind of been pushed into it? And so for me, completely agree, like that is one thing that I saw a huge shift in. And we provide reports and data intelligence into them when not only, hey, we're seeing this, so we need to shift, because I know that we said this is what we want to offer and go for, but we're actually seeing them searching this, and so we need to shift a little bit. The other big data piece, intelligence, that we provide, kind of like our crystal ball, if you will, is we do have that one data source that we have access to go see. And one of the we provide is opportunities at risk, where we can see they have an opportunity, but they're actually out searching our competitors. And we're seeing very active searching competitively and making sure we're providing that. So we need to shift our message, we need to get a customer, and then you have different tactics based on that.
Yeah, I like that. And one of the things that we're evolving, and it gets back to Rohan's discussion a bit more too, around like the extended sales cycles and so forth. We're also looking a lot at patterns of signals over time, and seeing how that impacts, like, what is that impact on, like I think you said earlier, protecting opportunities or protecting accounts, because we have seen patterns in the past of certain research occurring, and that leads to either higher or lower win or loss rates. So we're kind of doubling down in some of that area too, and kind of looking at networks of signals and how that relates to how we use our insights. So I couldn't agree with you more in terms of the protect aspect of pipeline and so forth.
Yeah, I have one additional question for all of you, and I'm sure that there are multiple and more enhanced data intelligence sources are accessible to you than what it was 2 years back. You are able to get the intent signals. You are able to track through machine learning what your customers are even thinking about. This question is just to understand what has been the most, what has excited you with the most enhanced intelligence source that you've lately used in the last 6 months? What do you think is this is a game changer according to you? The kind of data intelligence that you have seen that has helped you to build your strategies, or has just kind of caught your attention that, okay, this would be the next level of actionable intelligence for you?
The one single bit of data, it's so hard. I mean, Leslie was saying it earlier, like it's so hard because there's so much that we use that it's hard to pinpoint just one. I mean, I think it depends on the business, the product, the solution, and what has been going on the last 6 months. I was with a supply chain. I was supporting supply chain products during when this first happened. And so obviously we had to make huge shifts. We had to change so much. There was so much data information that we needed to look at that we weren't looking at before, that we needed when that happened. And then, coming over to Cisco, different products, different audiences, there's different things that we need to look at. Competitive data right now for us and our solutions is extremely important right now. Understanding, especially those accounts that have renewals, and we don't want a sinking ship. So we're really looking a lot at our renewals and that competitive data. And it all also, I think, depends on what is the business growth strategy, on what data you want. And that has shifted a lot in the 6 months. And so for us right now, it's competitive intelligence.
I would just add, it's kind of taking, so if you're in the third party context, it's that's kind of like the starting point, but then it's applying your own predictive on top of that, and what about patterns of research and so forth, that will that's kind of the added secret sauce, I think, to some of this. And it's also looking at how do you take all this data, unstructured data out there, and we're looking more at like strategic themes now too, around whether it's cloud like, oh, I've got a topic on, HR and it's payroll or something. Well, the next thing is like trying to answer the major themes or around cloud transformation or return to work, and what are those networks of topics and so forth that can actually help you answer that voice of customer and that research around themes as opposed to just products or solution areas. So to me, the next frontier is taking that intent data. Well, the one thing that I would point to is intent data, but kind of really buttressing it a lot with some other things in your business.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I think for us, the personas who we're targeting also, knowing what they are, staying up at 3 a.m. trying to figure out and solve for is very important. So that persona mapping really drives our messaging and our follow-up. So intent and persona information.
Yeah, to build on what Angel just said, I would say I'm not sure that there's any magical new data that has presented itself over the last year that have never existed before. I think that the most exciting trend, for me, for those of you who have talked to me recently, this is going to be an obvious one, but I really think that this push towards precision demand, which is a layer on top of account-based marketing or account-based engagement, which reintroduces the concept of the people, the actual human beings within these accounts, what they care about, how to speak to them differently, how to serve up experiences that are not just, bespoke or unique to the account attributes, but to that specific individual and what they're doing. So that way we have the ability to react to their moments, not just try to manufacture moments for them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So
I think that's,
it took me a minute to get off mute, but Leslie, I want to jump on that because actually right now we're going through line of business targeting, persona based. And so that is, you mentioned that it's a layer on top of account-based marketing, but in my brain, I'm thinking of it's like the account and then the people, them inside of the account for us to be more targeted towards them based on that. Am I thinking that through right?
Yeah, that's exactly. I was thinking like it's the next level of
Next level. Yes.
Yeah, the next
Yes.
level.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect. Me too.
If I could, what do you all do to really tailor the messaging? Do you all refresh messaging on a regular cadence? Like, what's the secret there? Any ideas? Because that's one area we find we build messaging, but we can't pivot soon enough, right? So that's a challenge given resources. Any ways you've approached successfully?
Well, I'm going to tell you how we're going to try it, because I would say we've not been successful yet. What we're going to try to do is we're going to kind of identify, the personas, the intent, the kinds of intent signals that you could tie to individual personas that, obviously are associated back to what you sell, and then create messages, like create our message that aligns to each intent signal, and then dynamically alter what we serve up to, which message we serve up to the persona based upon the prevailing intent signal. And the idea, and then see how that's working. And if we're seeing, one message is failing, then we swap that one out. And the goal is, we're hoping to really hold ourselves to the discipline of not just piling on another and another and another message, try this, but really optimizing. So this one's not, this persona, with this signal, with this message isn't floating, pull that one out, try a different one. That's what we're going to try.
So Leslie, that's it, the sales pitches?
What you're probably thinking of is the sales plays. Not quite. The sales plays that we're doing at Avanti are really more about enabling the sellers to react to things that they hear when they speak to a customer. And which is a little bit different. And certainly those things need to be closely tied together, right? So the intent signal should be born out of what customers say, what we hear from customers. So what marketing would queue up from a message perspective in response to the intent signal should align roughly to the sales plays. But the sales plays are more of like a finding the right blend of proactive and reactive for an individual rep.
Okay, very good.
It's more the broader messaging, right? Because we deploy email nurtures, we deploy account BDR flows. So those messages are the ones where it's harder to refresh frequently. And so I think that's what you're suggesting, is have those signals identified and then automate that process so it changes based on what signal and data is coming.
That's the idea.
We do a little bit of that, but yeah, it's still, when you've got a global account list and you've got a global play, it's harder to pivot across.
Okay.
So good luck
We only
with
have a few more minutes. Erica, when we spoke to you, you spoke about sales funnels or marketing funnels, and the typical being martini glass and switching to champagne. Could you share a little bit with everyone?
Yeah, it was, I was just referring to, I've heard a lot of marketers talk about account-based marketing in the middle of the funnel, later in the funnel stages. And we just go with the approach for the marketing, the demand gen marketing team here is we are doing targeted marketing across the entire thing. So we, global marketing will run programs to feed that funnel, but I have taken the marketing funnel that's usually like in the shape of what reminds me of a margarita glass, and it's like making it into a champagne glass and just quality all the way through so we can get higher conversions. Sales is happy with the leads that are coming in, or BDRs, and we're seeing higher conversions all the way through. And that is where also I think the sales partnership has helped me in those relationships as we shifted to that model. Because before they're like, oh, your leads are nothing, I don't even know what I'm getting. And so we show them the strategy from the start all the way through. Here's what we're doing from a brand perspective to start bringing them in, and awareness all the way through, just to be more targeted in that way. And that's really, really helped us. We've seen higher conversions, we've seen higher account engagement. And also one thing that we look at is our expand within businesses. So if we only have it in one business unit, that expansion as well is something that we measure as well.
Okay. And then someone else in the audience said it would be interesting to hear some views on how you also work toward looking at how your organizations are helping customers pivot quickly to change, not known to customer today based on new technology or use cases. For instance, could be startup innovating. Is it part of ABM? So helping your customers do pivots, I guess.
I think the question evolves around knowing more about your customers, using the technology, and you might know about your customer, but if that customer's end audience is belonging to, let's say, aviation industry or travel industry, and that's going down. So, there is a high possibility that you will lose your customer despite all the checks and balances that you had. So, in this case, is there a technology that helps you to pivot in such situations, or avert it, or even foresee it for the future? I think that's what the question Kavita is trying to ask.
This is an interesting one.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is an interesting one because I kind of read it as like, do you look for opportunities to almost like co-innovate, right? With your customer. I think that's hard to do from a marketing perspective, but if this is inherent to the DNA of your business and the value proposition and the differentiator that your business brings to the customers, then I think you need to build that into the types of intent signals that you look for, probably in partnership with your product development team, or if you have an in-house innovation team.
Okay, and very good. So we're at our time limit. Thank you very much. This is a great discussion. Any other parting words of wisdom for folks? Otherwise, maybe we can get together in a couple months and take on a new topic.
Keep using data, make it actionable, make it simple, and keep keep doing. I love the account-based exchange experience model. I think that's the right term. Partner with your internal team members and keep at it.
Thanks, Angel.
Totally. What she said.
Yeah, I agree.
And what she said, your business results will prove it out at the end of the day, and that's what really matters. So,
But you have to give it time. Give it time.
Yeah.
Yes.
and better customer experience with that too. So,
Yes.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Well,
Bob.
thank you all. It's a pleasure.
Thank you all.
Thank
thank you, everyone. Have a
Take
great
care.
evening or night,
Have a good day.
morning.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.